It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Mandy the Martyr. And now, on with the show! Hey everybody, it's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey gang.
And Les Webster.
Hi all.
How's everybody doing?
Pretty good.
Not bad. And you?
Doing okay, I guess. So what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
Well, I was going to talk about how many unbelievably awesome comics came out last week, because it was just like a ridiculously huge shit ton of cool comics. I was going to talk about that.
Okay.
But then I heard something this morning that is cooler than all of those awesome comics. You remember not long ago, I mentioned the pilot that Amazon Video had done of The Tick?
Mm-hmm.
They picked it up.
Cool.
Oh, that's good. It was a fun pilot.
Yes. And now we get to know what happens after the cliffhanger that they left us on.
Woo-hoo.
Well, I say now. By now, I mean who the hell knows when, because they haven't said yet, and it'll probably be months and months. But eventually, at least, we will know how the suit works.
Awesome.
That's very cool.
I'm excited. More excited than I should be for something that may not happen for a year, but whatever. It's fine. We'll be there. We'll get there. We'll
get there. Awesome. Anything else? Not that that's not enough.
Not for me, other than there was a shit ton of cool comics last week, but it took me all weekend to read those puppies, man. God, it's forever. But anyway, yeah, no, that's all I got.
Cool. Les, how about you?
I'm in the midst of reading Strange Girl Omnibus, which was an 18-issue series by Rick Remender back in the early 2000s, I want to say. Yes, it only lasted 18 issues, but it is humorous, but it can be extremely off-putting. I can see where people would be upset with parts of it. But as a read, it's not bad at all. I'm probably halfway through that now, and I'm enjoying it.
Cool. Very cool. Anything else going on this past week?
No, just drinking a lot of smoothies.
Smoothies. I don't think a Mai Tai counts as a smoothie, sir.
There you go.
Well, I'm sorry, guys. I haven't had any alcohol. I just stay with the smoothies.
You're not a drinker?
Not really. I do like a Mai Tai, but I have one. Well, I probably have two a year.
I mean, come on, man. How far can you drive on the island?
Right, no shit. Which beach are you sitting on, wiggling your toes in the Hawaiian sand while you're reading this book of yours? I mean, come on.
Well, we're on the Big Island now, and we've been out and about. We went to one of the macadamia nut processing plants.
Ah, the old pilgrimage home to the nut house.
Wow.
I'll tell you guys, it is amazing how they can season a macadamia nut. I don't know if you guys know that you can buy Spam-flavored macadamia nuts.
Dear Lord.
So it's pretty amazing. It's fun.
That goes well with our topic for today, but I don't want to make that jump yet.
Yeah. I'm going to see how that works in. But things like macadamia nut brittle is extremely good. And they have Kikkoman flavored macadamia nuts. I don't know. It's too many for me to take in. So I took about 3/4 of it in instead.
As much
Enough
as
to
you
make
could.
you go insane.
Them too, yes.
I'm gonna go with you with that one because the one that popped into my head was not clean at all.
Okay.
Thank you for thinking of that.
Okay, cool. I've been catching up on reading this past week and actually got a book that I've been waiting on for a couple months. It finally came out. I first heard about it back on when I was doing reviews for Free Comic Day. I read the little teaser for it and I was like, oh, this ought to be fun. And it was. It's called Mooncop by Tom Gauld from Drawn and Quarterly. And it's the day-to-day events of a cop who's stationed on the moon as the entire population is moving back to Earth. So there's really not a whole heck of a lot for him to do. And it sounds kind of boring, but there's a lot of dry humor in it, and it's kind of funny. And I mean there were several times I actually laughed out loud. I highly recommend this book. It's great. And I just said it just came out this past week, so I'd definitely go to your local store and check it out. Or if they don't have it, I'm sure they'll be happy to order it for you. But I loved it. It was great. I wouldn't mind going back and reading it again.
Is it a single issue or a graphic novel?
It's really kind of a comic strip.
Oh, okay.
Because he's a cartoonist for I'm not sure which paper, but it's in cartoon form. It just happens to be, instead of a kind of an episodic thing, it's an entire story that lasts about 40 pages or so, something like that.
Okay.
Something like that. And so it may be more pages than that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But very, very funny.
Cool.
I caught a movie. I had never heard of this one. It came out in 2014. Maybe you guys have heard of it. It's called Don't Blink, and it's a horror. It's kind of a horror film, or more of a scary film, which kind of fits into what we're going to be talking about. It starred Mina Savari, Brian Austin Green, Joanne Kelly, and Zach Ward, among others. The premise is a group of people go to this resort, a remote resort, which they can't find anybody there. There's nobody there. And as they're trying to find out what the hell has happened to everybody, all of a sudden they start disappearing as well. And it's a low budget thing, so the disappearance are done by camera tricks. And that's what kind of got me going, because I mean, it was very intriguing. I mean, it's not one of the strongest stories that you'll see. There were some problems, but it kind of intrigued me how people disappear and how others respond. Yes, we've seen something similar to it before, but this was a little different. And yeah, I wouldn't mind checking it out again. It was just kind of a little unique, cool movie.
Cool.
Very nice.
So y'all have not heard of that one?
No.
Where did you see it?
I saw it on one of the networks. It was one of the Showtime networks.
No, I don't remember seeing it at the posting for the theater, but I did know that it was coming up on one of the cable stations.
Yeah. If you get a chance, y'all gotta check it out. I mean, like I said, it's not, you gotta suspend this your disbelief on certain plot elements and stuff, but still, it's a nice little entertaining kind of movie.
Yep.
Anyway,
that's a subgenre that gets used. So I mean, clearly, it gets used because it works. So there you go.
Yep. When done right, it works very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go ahead and get into this week's topic. We're kind of doing something special. As you guys or our listeners know, this is October. So we decided to devote the entire month to the genre of horror, which of course Mike is just jumping up and down going, yay, yay.
I don't jump up and down for much.
Okay, well, you've been chomping at the bit to get to this.
I have suggested it more than once.
Yes.
Admittedly.
And I don't blame you.
And this is a
I'm not
really good time to get to it, so, we're good.
Oh, of course.
Unlike Valentine's Day or Labor Day, something like that. Yeah, this is a better time.
I didn't only suggest it on holidays, he said over defensively.
Yes, I remember some kind of comment back during the summer about, hey, horror. Okay, sure.
Yeah, now that I think about it, that actually was pretty close to Memorial Day. I didn't do that on purpose.
So for the next few weeks, we'll be going over the horror genre in different aspects. But for today's episode, we just kind of want to do an overview and just kind of ask the question, why do we love horror? Why do we love to be scared to death? And why is it so successful? And with that, I'm just going to open it up to the rest of the gang and get your thoughts.
To whichever sucker speaks first. Oh, damn.
Yeah.
All right, fine. I spoke first. See, I have long kind of I've been thinking about this off and on for a while, and I'm not entirely sure why I dig horror so much. I think a lot of it is just the different. I think I come at it from a science fiction kind of direction, just in general. I mean, just to broaden it up as much as I possibly can. So there's a lot of the other in it, and it gets played on a lot. And I think that's a lot of where I come at it from. Honestly, I've never really been big on like the slasher movies. I've always kind of gotten more into the psychological stuff and the otherworldly type stuff. Like Lovecraft has been a big influence on me, and one of my favorite literary character, and I've used the word literary a bit loosely here, but literary characters has been Hannibal Lecter for a long time. It's Silence of the Lambs. I got introduced to him through Silence of the Lambs, which I don't know if that really counts as a horror movie, but the character of Lecter got played up so dramatically and was done so well in that movie that it really took over and spawned a bunch of other movies. But
Surprise.
The whole idea there is the psychological aspect of it too. It's okay, this guy, and honestly, I will. I'm going to go there. I think that series went on a book too long. I really think they ruined it to an extent by trying to go too deep into Lecter's past. I think the mystery was a big part of the appeal of that character, but I'm digressing a bit on Hannibal Lecter, which kind of doesn't surprise me much. But
I agree. I've not read Hannibal Rising. I've not seen the movie, and honestly, I'm not interested. I don't want to know. I don't want to know his origins. I agree with you. There's the mystery that's appealing.
If you read Hannibal, I won't say if you saw the movie, but if you read the book, because I don't recall, I haven't seen the movie in a while, so I don't recall if this made it in it. They actually make some hints at his background because a lot of that book is in his head, which is funny that they really only make a few hints to about his background inside his own head. And I think that in and of itself says a lot about the character and how unnecessary it is to go too far into that background. But like I said, I don't know how much of that translated into the movie, but it was. I think the movie that movie was its own problem to an extent.
Yeah.
In that case, Mike, don't you see, or don't you feel that it's perhaps him denying a lot of things in his past? If the book is presented in his mind.
Have you
he's
read the
shutting
book?
out things. No, I have not. But just hearing what you have said about it.
There's definitely some shutting out going on in that book inside his head.
Okay.
Absolutely. And they actually it actually goes into some of the psychological detail, and I may not be describing this real well, but it, it's hard to describe without. I mean, honestly, I haven't read the book in 10 years, so that makes it hard to describe too. But it's on my stack of stuff I want to reread sometime soon. But it's also been on that stack for over a year. So, but yeah, there's the time spent inside his head describes an inordinately structured mind. We'll put it that way. And so, yeah, there's definitely some blocking out of memories, symbolic and otherwise. And I think a lot of that is stuff that the way it's presented in that setting is enough. And I don't think you needed to go further. But I didn't get a vote, so at that point people were so hungry for more. They just did it, which would have been really cool if Thomas Harris was a better writer, but that's a different issue.
That's another podcast.
It could be, yes.
Well, horror has been around since stories were first told. And if you look at some of the early stories of the Greeks or the Romans, they had horror values to them. People have always enjoyed being afraid by something that is not going to touch them, harm them, drive them insane. Although you mentioned Lovecraft, which is some stuff that could send you that direction, or Ambrose Bierce wrote several books of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
We've always enjoyed it. And now we have the thrill of having it either in print or on film, where we could read and think about it or watch it. To me, a book like King's It is a horror story, yet it is one that entertains you both as they are children facing the monster or as adults facing the monster. And the adults, of course, have forgotten what they did to defeat the monster as children. There, to me, you've got a second layer of horror. All of a sudden, if they cannot remember how they defeated him the first time, they've got to come up with the whole new idea for this round. But horror in movie form can scare the crap out of you. Yet, how many times have you been to a movie, seen something that really scares you, and then the whole crowd starts giggling or tittering because they just got this crap scared out of them?
Mm-hmm.
It's a release.
Yet, it's a release, yet they'll be back. Those people will even come back to the next showing of that film. There are big differences, and Mike started with them, of horror. You have the psychological, which to me one of the best ever was Hitchcock's Psycho. That scared me because it was an unknown, and it was not until the very end did you find, sorry about the spoiler here, but you found that the mother was dead. She was mummified, and the boy was the one committing the killings. So, like I said, up to the very end, it wasn't known. It wasn't set in front of you. It was I've said this before, it was a fair detective story. But in this one also, they exposed it in the last chapter, that the man was psychotic and committed the murders.
Well, and they told that story. I mean, they told that story almost exclusively from the point of view of the victims. And so if they don't see it coming, they never know who's the killer. And that killer was really good at not letting them see it coming.
I agree.
Yep.
And okay, now are there other movies where Halloween, the Halloween series, and I'm talking 1 and 2. Let's not go any further than that, please. Those were horror movies. You knew who the killer was, but you didn't know what was going to happen.
You didn't know how, you didn't know when. You could see him slowly, menacingly walking towards you, but when was he going to explode into blazing speed and rip your friggin' head off? You never know.
Yeah, the thing with Halloween is the way that they did it is, and especially even showed it at the ending. He could be anywhere. He could be everywhere. He could be right behind you. He could be down the street, and that's just as scary.
He's right behind you right now. Ah!
Which would be interesting since there's a wall behind him. He's coming out of the wall.
You were sitting behind me at the theater, weren't you?
Oh boy, feel-a-rama.
There's another obscure movie reference.
To date, I don't know of any other genre that causes people to shout at a screen. How many people go yell things like, "Don't go in there"?
Yeah, get out of the house.
Quit eating my popcorn, things like that, yeah.
Especially when you go to the movie by yourself and people say that to you. That's not good, Les. That's not good.
No, that's true. It's cost me several boxes of popcorn.
Well, I mean, we kind of touched on it a little bit, dating back so far back. Let's take a look at fairy tales. Oh my God! I mean, Hansel and Gretel, about to be eaten. Same thing with Little Red Riding Hood. It's kind of funny. Getting older, you look at these stories, go, "Oh my God! Why are we telling these things to kids?"
Yeah, they got rewritten to be told to kids. Hans Christian Andersen rewrote those stories in ways that were not quite so horrifying. You want to see freaky stuff, go back to Andrew Lang and his fairy books. That's freaky stuff.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
And a lot of the older tellings of those fairy tales are really, really nasty. But somewhere in the 19th century, they got rebooted, shall we say, in a way that was a little more kid-friendly. And then Disney just sort of ran with it and went entirely kid-friendly with them.
Not a reboot, no.
DC's Vertigo line had a series of books years ago, the Big Book of series, and they covered crime and love and things like that. But one of them was about, I think it was about the Brothers Grimm. And they were showing you what the stories were taken from the original manuscripts. Those were frickin' brutal. And those were all horror stories. There was nothing fancy and nice about any of that. Andersen is very similar.
Yeah, you know who else did that when they started out? The Zenoscope's Grimm Fairy Tales title. That's what that was for like the first 40 issues. It was going back to the horrific tellings of those fairy tales and variations on them, of course.
And successfully.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thomas, do you have an idea as to why we like to be scared?
I've been trying to think about this since I hosted This Is What We Want to Talk About. It's, well, like you said, there's a release there. We all kind of fear what's not in our control, and there's just something about the unknown. I mean, you kind of talk about it as psychological, and even the slasher or the monsters, they may be somewhat known. There's still a element of control that there's, y'all see what I'm talking about?
Another aspect of that is power.
Power,
And
exactly.
this is where you get into like the vampire, because the vampire, ever since Stoker, is all about power.
Because whether you're reading a book or you're watching a movie, you kind of go to this place, but you always know you can put the book down, the movie be over real quick, and things kind of go back to normal and everything's okay.
Right, because fear is a strong emotion, and one of the most common representations of fear is the fight or flight reflex. And the simple explanation for the fight or flight reflex is adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
So experiencing a small amount of fear in a limited space, like in a movie, a 90-minute movie, is a way to get your adrenaline going, which produces a high, to be honest. Not to take this all clinical on us here, but that's ultimately the deal, is getting scared is a bit of a rush. Some people feel that rush differently, and that's why some people don't like horror. But
Right.
The rest of us kind of like it.
There's nothing like it. There's nothing like that feeling, and then have that calming sense when it's over. And you can just say it was only a movie, it was only a book, it was only a dream. But there are so many different venues now for horror to be presented, and we've covered a lot of them. One that just came to my mind was a spook house or a amusement ride where you have to go through the dark areas and something may spring out at you or things like that. My wife has a way to battle it. We were riding one at a state fair, and some guy in a mask decided to jump out and touch her to scare her. She ended up giving him a shot to the nose. And she was riding with a friend. I was riding with my little brother in a car behind. And when we got out, she said, "Did that guy come out and grab you?" And I said, "What guy?" And as we're standing talking, here comes the guy pulling the mask off, yelling and screaming and cursing that he's not going to do that ever again. So
you don't mess with Gina. You don't mess with me.
There's a look at different reactions by people.
That's true.
If it's a physical thing, my wife will knock you down.
It's that fight or flight.
It's a fight or flight situation.
One or the other. A lot of people will run. Some people will take a swipe at it, and that's the way it works. My wife has a totally different way of dealing with those situations. She doesn't go.
Mm-hmm.
She stays home.
Okay. That makes it simple.
Yep.
And Gina has a interesting way of dealing with zombies who follow her. I remember you telling me that story from San Diego.
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell that real quick.
I was at the San Diego Comic-Con. Gina walked over to the site with me because she was going to the hotel adjacent to it to use the swimming pool where she could sit out and sunbathe while I was at the show. She said goodbye to me and was walking away when some people dressed as zombies were shuffling along, and one came up to her, grunted, tried to hand her a piece of paper that was, one of those come see our show type things. And she said, "No, thank you." Well, the guy kept following her and grunting. And about the third time, she just turned and said, "You zombies are all alike. You just don't take no for anything." The guy broke out of character, started laughing. He couldn't help himself, and Gina just turned and walked away. So
Nice.
Oh.
When in doubt, when in doubt, make the zombie laugh.
That's right.
Good with that plan.
But for several years now, okay, Psycho was a slasher movie, but it was done differently than was Halloween. But then you turn around and do a series of movies that were feeding off Halloween type killers. Friday the 13th was one. It just, I don't know, it became so diluted that people were getting a little bit fed up here and there with a slasher movie, and to me, almost took it out of the genre of horror. Currently now it's more the supernatural look to scare you.
And zombies.
And zombies, yes. And of course...
Sometimes both at the same time, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, there's a new one coming out here within the next 2 weeks. And of course you're going to get ready for it because Halloween's coming up and people are going to want to go see a scary movie at Halloween. I don't know if I'm going to be lined up for them, but I can see where people would be interested. There I have the question out there, guys, are the new slasher movies, Mike said that slasher movies really are not horror, but are the newer ones with the paranormal into that stuff? Is that a horror movie or not?
Movies like Paranormal Activity and
Yeah,
got the I think they're doing the Annabelle thing. They're doing a sequel to that.
Yeah.
Which, given how well that went over, surprises me a little. But sure. And my thing about slasher movies wasn't that they weren't horror. It's just that they were not my
preferred
favorite
version of horror.
Right. And don't get me wrong. Part of what jump-started me into horror was Halloween.
Yeah.
I recall somebody showing me that movie in high school, but
yeah, I wonder who that was.
Some guy, I don't know. Does a podcast or something now, I don't know.
I want to go back to something that Les said, and you called Psycho a slasher film. I can see that. I think it's more of a suspense film. I can see where the elements that are now what we associate with slasher films. I think it's more of a suspense film that just happens to have someone who wields a knife to kill people. Where Halloween and then of course all the knockoffs and parodies and all that, that's more of a slasher. Y'all see where I'm getting at?
Yeah, kind of. I think of Psycho as being the seed.
Yeah.
For the slasher genre, where I mean, clearly it took 18 years for it to grow, because that's how long it took for Carpenter to get around to making Halloween. Ultimately, yeah, I mean, Hitchcock is definitely best known for his suspense. There were some suspenseful movies, and he did. I mean, stuff like The Birds, that was clearly a very suspenseful movie. And honestly, a lot more gory than Psycho. But yeah, I think the idea of that chef knife as a murder weapon and coming in and killing somebody unseen, I think there are a lot of there's a lot of the germ there for the slasher idea. I mean, whether that movie is a slasher movie or not, I think is just debatable.
Yeah.
But I definitely think it was.
Yeah, I'm not.
If not the movie that sparked John Carpenter, then it was definitely one of them.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I just with the slasher films, and unfortunately, yeah, I am a big Halloween fan of the franchise, as bad as some of the films are. Over the years, they've kind of gotten away from the suspense and the scares to more of the visual We got to see the blood. We got to see the guts. There's going to be some jump scares and that kind of thing.
And I kind of blame the 80s for that because I think that's really, I mean, sure, Halloween was 78, right?
Right.
I keep thinking that was 78.
Yeah.
But a lot of the quote unquote clones and spin-offs and however you want to call them came during the 80s. And the 80s was a period of excess. It was also a period of great fear because it was a period of excess for economic reasons because the country was doing well financially. And the fear came from almost single-handedly came from the Cold War and how weird things were getting then. And so it took the body count from Halloween and multiplied it because just more and more and more. That was what the 80s was all about. It was more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
More this, more that, more whatever.
Yeah.
So more bodies hitting the floor.
More
people getting stabbed in the face. More gore.
Mm-hmm.
More jump scares. More all of it. And yes, I think it did to an extent dilute it. And I think conditions changed near the end of the decade that made it a little less relevant. And that's why, I mean, there are still some, it's still an important genre. Or subgenre. It's still an important part of the horror genre. But yeah, you don't get as much of it now because it doesn't. We're not in the same world now.
Right.
It doesn't play the same.
Well, now that kind of movie or that kind of suspenseful movie is one of those where the woman is afraid of the boy next door, or somebody hires a surrogate for carrying a baby. Then all of a sudden, which has been used in the past, but they're springing it, to me, they're springing it on the public like it's something all brand new, which it is not. Yet people will flock to see the movies.
Right, because in the past it has been successful enough that if you polish it a bit, do something slightly different, and put it out there, there's at least a reasonable chance that it will be successful as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you get into sequels and reboots and stuff. It's the same mentality. You're basically banking on previous success to carry you through. You're banking on your director and your writers doing enough new not necessarily, whether it's new or not, at least doing stuff in a different order so that it seems new or feels new, or doing it in a different costume. You can do enough of that to make it at least feel somewhat original and get the same sense of fear out of your audience, then it's going to make money.
Yep.
Okay, when you redo a movie, see, Psycho was done in '60. I remember that because I was probably too young to go see it, but I just told my parents it was part of a double feature, and they said, "Oh, okay." In '98, it was done.
Oh God.
By Gus Van Sant, and what I recall, it was shot almost scene to scene.
Yeah, it was pretty. It was pretty much shot for shot.
That's kind of what I heard too. I did not watch it.
I have.
I've seen that movie. I've seen Hitchcock doing that movie. Why the hell would I give a shit about Gus Van Sant doing that movie? Yeah.
Yeah. There was very minor changes. Because I've seen it. What they didn't add anything. And the real sad thing is, there's such a great cast of that film, and Gus Van Sant's a good director. I just don't understand. If you wanted to remake it, do it something differently. I would still probably have a problem with it, but at least.
Well, I mean, if we want to stay on the Psycho thing here.
Okay.
How many of y'all saw Psycho 2?
Oh yes, I have.
I have, yeah.
Right, which was 86. I'm guessing. I don't remember.
80.
It was well into the 80s, and I mean, ultimately, the story itself wasn't that different. It was just there was a twist in the whole killer thing. I mean, the whole idea is Norman Bates gets out of wherever he got sent,
Yeah.
and comes back to the motel, and then people start dying again, and it's not hugely original, especially now. I mean, I say that from 30 years hence, but it wasn't that bad, I didn't think. I thought it was a fairly decent sequel.
Well, yeah, I thought it was a real good sequel. The thing is you had to question yourself, just as Norman was questioning himself. Is he losing it? Is he actually killing again? And you didn't know that until the end of the film. And
Right.
and of course I won't spoil it for anybody because it is a good sequel. It's about
despite being 30 years old.
Well, true.
I think spoiling it is
true, but I mean,
yeah, go watch it for sure.
It's about as good a sequel for the original film, which probably should never have had a sequel.
Well, and it took 25 years for anybody to get up the guts.
Yeah. And for the record, do not watch Psycho 3. I do recommend Psycho 4 because it's kind of an origin tale. Which, of course, if you're watching Bates Motel, you're probably, it's not going along the same lines Bates Motel it's going off a different course for obviously, but I did like Psycho 4. It's kind of the thing of Hannibal. It kind of went into his past and how he came to be the way he was. The question is, do you really want to see that? And in this case, I went for the ride. I mean, it wasn't anything that we didn't already know, but it was a nice told story.
Psycho 2 was 1983, by the way.
Okay, I was thinking it was 84, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, Psycho 2 was 83, and 3 was 86, and then 90 for the Psycho 4 TV movie. But then you look at it and you go, well, all 4 of those were Anthony Perkins.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, now that's pulling a coup there. They didn't have to get someone older to play him older. They didn't have to get someone younger to play him as a kid.
Well, they actually did in the 4th one.
In the 4th one, but he was still there.
But yeah, he was still there because he was telling it was all through flashbacks. Yeah.
Right.
And man, you talk about Anthony Perkins, and we're going to go on a tangent, and I apologize for this, but that's what we're known for.
Mm.
Man, he had a career before that film, but that film made him, and it worked so well because he was the guy next door. He looked like, to use a quote from the film, he wouldn't even harm a fly. He looked like he was so shy and timid, but he would be willing to help you and all that. And then, man, you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah. And you remember he played a baseball player.
Fear Strikes Out.
Fear Strikes Out. About a player who kind of went off the deep end. He was a fine actor.
10-star. Where he was the sheriff of the town, but he didn't have the confidence to do the job, and I believe Henry Fonda was in this one as well. To try to mentor him and try to get him, I think it was Henry Fonda. That was a good one too. And now we're getting into Anthony Perkins' career.
Well, I'm even thinking about what he did, the basketball movie he did. You remember that one? Where he played the basketball player? I'm trying to think. It's one of his first movies, too.
It's not ringing a bell to me. Okay, anyway. Sorry, that's okay. Getting back to why do we like to be scared? I think y'all hit it on the head. That it's just it's a rush. It has to do with, it's a little bit of euphoria of kind of losing control and then get it in the back. Mike, go back to your whole conversation about the thing about the vampires and the power, because we kind of passed over that.
Oh, sure. Let me just rewind here for a minute. Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, we could do a whole month on vampires, but the short version is there were vampire stories before Stoker, before Dracula. There had been for a long time. The vampire is one of those stories that it's one of those rare stories that some variation pops up in pretty much every major culture in the world at some point. Mostly in the last couple hundred years, but not entirely. Some of them are older. And sometimes they're just, I mean, it kind of runs the spectrum of the type of horror that they usually embody. But what Dracula did was it focused several aspects into this one supremely confident and charismatic character. And the whole thing was Dracula just exuded power. And over the years, the treatments of him changed to different, it sort of played with the power and changed how that power came across. I mean, sometimes it was brute force. I mean, I think a lot of the early movie adaptations, I mean, other than after Dracula, but before, like Hammer, the ones that he showed up in there, it was usually just brute strength, and a lot of times it was there was usually a minor element of seduction, and then as it goes on, obviously you get into the 60s and 70s, and the seduction thing takes the front seat, and so you've got a lot of basically dead bimbos laying around, mostly naked, and then when you get to the late 70s, you get Anne Rice, an Interview with the Vampire, and that shifts that power level up even further and makes, I mean, the whole point of that book, it's funny when you watch or when you see where that series went, both in print and in movies. It all follows Lestat, but go back and read Interview with the Vampire. That's Louis's book. And Louis is the one who is the more human of the two. And so you get I won't say very early, but you get a pretty early example of the anti-hero in Louis. Because we brought up anti-heroes before in comics. And it's that power, it wavers and it changes and it shifts, and that's how you get variations on the vampire stories.
Very true.
Yep.
Yes, very true.
I mean, even up to Dracula Untold, where it's definitely a different kind of power. I mean, the whole point of that was the saving his family, the saving the power. He wanted the power to save his people and his family, and it's a pretty brutal power, but that's also kind of endemic of the times. Well, once again, most movies are in some way.
Cool. Anybody else have any kind of final thoughts before we wrap things up? This has been very interesting. I've enjoyed this.
I will throw one thing in, because Les mentioned seeing Psycho basically as a kid. The one that got me when I was 10 was The Shining. And it was a drive-in. It was a double feature. It was one of those deals where you're watching one movie and then you make the kids go to the back of the car and go to sleep. But what they didn't take into account with me was that my insomnia was starting to develop.
Yay.
So I got to watch most of The Shining when I was 10 years old. That'll have an effect on you, let me tell you. I have still not gone back to watch that movie again. I have not seen it since. I need to do it. I need to just make myself sit down and watch it.
You have seen the miniseries, right?
I think I watched at least some of that. I did not watch much of it.
I like the miniseries as well.
I liked it more than the movie. I thought it was much better representation of the book.
Yeah. From what I understand, so was Stephen King. But anyway.
Well, obviously the movie was just one of those, let's show Jack Nicholson and see what goes on.
Well, that was Kubrick for you. He decided to go off and do his own thing. And just a side note, there is a video on YouTube. I'm going to have to look it up and see if we can put the link in the show notes. Someone did an analysis of just how messed up that hotel is. Talking about there's no way if you're looking at some of these scenes, how the hotel should be designed, but there should be walls here, but there's not. There should be a room here, but it's not. Just going by what you saw in the film, and it's very crazy. But you're going, okay, how come I didn't catch that before? It's really weird. I'm gonna have to find that video. Damn it.
Well, if you want to get technical, the idea of using architecture to amplify horror, that goes back to Lovecraft.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's a digression too.
Anything else?
This is one that we can come back to time and again. Believe me, we haven't touched so many things.
Woohoo!
It's a good thing because
we'll
be
able to separate a lot of it with the various monsters and/or psychological thrilling type situations. And then, of course, you swing the other way and do the parodies, which some of them are great and some of them are worthless. Less than great.
Uh-huh.
Less than great.
Cool.
I didn't even mean that. Sorry. I didn't even say
Here comes that bus.
Less the great. Woohoo!
Oh, I didn't know. That was not the bus. That was not. I didn't know.
This is good.
It's just a little.
This is going to be a fun month. I know Mikey's excited about this, but this is going to be some fun stuff.
Right. Hey, and I asked for one episode about horror a few months ago, and here I've got 5.
Be careful what you ask for, man.
This ought to hold me for a while.
Awesome.
So true.
Yeah, well, this is gonna be a fun month. I can already tell. So when we come back, we'll do our weekly picks. And we're back, and it's time for our weekly picks, and leading off is Mike.
I'm leading off, and I'm going to lead off with a Dynamite book. I'm going with James Bond, number 10. This is written by Warren Ellis with art by Jason Masters, and this is a really interesting series if you're a Bond fan, because it's quite different from the Bond we're used to these days. And that is not a bad thing at all. I mean, Bond is another one of those we could do an episode on probably. But and especially I will say if you have read any of the Ian Fleming novels, you'll like this Bond. And he's a lot of fun because he's very calm and cool most of the time, and then when it starts, and it goes nuts and it turns into action, and it's great. The current story is essentially that Bond is, almost said on the run. He's not really on the run, but MI6 is getting flack from both sides. They are having difficulties with some hidden enemy, and they're also having bureaucratic issues with the government itself. And so they're trying to solve this big problem, and in a world where Bond can't carry a gun in England. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they get themselves out of this. This is, I think, the 4th book of the arc, and I believe it's supposed to be a 6-issue arc. So it's like right in the middle. If you're not the jump in type, then go back to issue 7 and start there. But it's a fun story. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And it's Warren Ellis.
Yeah. How can you go wrong? Right.
We said it at the same time. That's awesome.
That's how true it is.
I was mistaken. I thought that they were running the first series and then it was just going to be ending. But here they are to issue 10. So
yeah, we're in the 2nd arc now. Yeah, the first I think they weren't sure if they were going to keep it going after the 1st arc, but there's been enough response, I guess, that it's still going. I think there's plans for a 3rd arc as well. I believe I remember hearing that. I'm not sure Ellis is writing the 3rd arc, but I believe there's going to be a 3rd arc.
Sounds fun, though.
Yep. Les?
Well, my first choice has a story. And this story is the town of Full Moon Hollow. is under attack. Full Moon Hollow is considered the paranormal capital of the world, and it's haunted by something. And the something is stranger than usual since they are the paranormal capital. This item, adults can't see it. If they do see it, they can't remember it. Or if they do see it, they go crazy from it. Only a group of scouts can save the town from a zombie outbreak. This is going to be brought to you by Steve Bryant and Jason Millett. Action Labs Entertainment is putting it out, and this is the trade paperback of Ghoul Scouts, Night of the Unliving Undead. I read the first 3 issues of this, and this is going to be carrying the first, I believe it's 5, and it was fun. It was a fun read. It was easy. It's all ages. So you don't have to have huge brain cells like me, unlike me. I'm on vacation, so I can say that. No, it's a fun read, and I do recommend it.
All ages horror is another thing that you wouldn't have seen in the 80s, let me tell you.
Yeah. No, not at all.
Well, you probably wouldn't have seen it in the 90s either.
No, not so much.
It's
kind of cool now.
Yeah. Closest thing you would have gotten back in those days is Casper and Winnie the Witch, which is not going to exactly be a horror, but
little hot
Scooby-Doo.
stuff.
And Scooby-Doo, yeah. Yeah, little hot stuff, that's true. Cool. I realize that my 2 picks have a common illustrator, Giselle Lagacy. I'm sure I butchered that name, and I apologize. But for my first pick is also from Dynamite. It is Betty Boop, number 1. And the reason why I picked this is because it's being written by Roger Langridge. Loved his work. I read his run on Popeye, but it was what was the one he did for Boom?
Baker Street Peculiars?
Well, there's that, and then but there was an older one. It was like Snarked.
Yes.
Snarked. Yes, that's the one I was thinking about.
Which was based on Carol's poem about the walrus and the carpenter.
Yes, that's it. That I think that was my introduction to his writing. So I'm kind of curious to see how he handles Betty Boop, and it's going to be interesting to see how. I mean, this is a character that was created in the 30s.
Yes.
Was it earlier, or was the 30s pretty much?
No, it was in the 30s because it was talkies.
Okay. See how this character will be received, because it's going to be her and Coco the Clown and Bimbo and all of them. So it's going to be interesting to check it out. And of course, like I said, since it's Langridge writing it, it ought to be fun.
I'm ready for this one too.
Yep.
Yeah, because I know you like his writing, and of course the cover is done by Howard Chaykin, one of your favorites.
Yeah.
Cool. Mikey, number 2.
All right. My number 2 is a number 8. And more specifically, it is A&A, The Adventures of Archer and Armstrong, number 8, which is a Valiant book written by Rafer Roberts and drawn by Mike Norton. And this particular issue finds us smack dab in the middle of Archer and Armstrong go to the circus.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think it's going to be that simple, you're crazy. Because nothing is that simple with these guys. They are in a circus where there appears to be several clones of Armstrong doing all of the traditional circus carnival type stuff. And Armstrong is not surprisingly offended by this, so he's doing what he can do to stop it, and I think this may be the end of this arc, so this is definitely going to be a fun place to jump on.
It's a fun series.
It is entirely. It is an absolute riot of a series.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
I was just curious, how many issues were there in the first run?
The first run? Oh, of
Archer and Armstrong.
I do not remember off the top of my head.
I don't remember. I would probably say about 20 or somewhere in the 20s.
When you started reading this series then, and you've discussed it before, but when you started reading this series again, did you have to know the previous stuff, or was it all new surprise, here we go?
Valiant is really good about kind of doing a bit of a synopsis at the beginning of their issues. And this is pretty much every issue. So you can get by without knowing that stuff. I mean, obviously, I suggest going back and checking that stuff out just because it's really good. But you could start with this series and be all right. There's enough backstory explained there.
Yeah.
And you get more as they talk, and you pick things up.
Yeah, they do a previously page without actually calling it previously.
Right. Sometimes they call it previously, but it depends on the book.
Yeah. The first page usually does a little synopsis of about maybe a paragraph or so, kind of overview, and then the story so far is this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Along those lines. Cool. Les.
My second choice is from Dynamite Entertainment.
A lot of Dynamite love this week.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
This one is features two of my favorite characters. The title is Army of Darkness, Xena, Warrior Princess, and I'm ready for this because Scott Lobdell writing, Elliot Fernandez doing the art. Xena has an army of thousands, but they have fallen to an ancient evil, so she has to summon an ally to assist her, and the only ally she can find to help prevent the end of the world is, unfortunately, Ash from Army of Darkness. I believe they had done a series prior to this, if I'm not mistaken, with the two characters.
I think so.
So this is going to be a return, and you're going to have the wise-ass, smart-ass, time-traveling Ash to assist her, and that's the first one was fun, so this one I think will be as much fun or more.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm not huge on the crossovers, but recently they've been doing really well with the Army of Darkness crossovers. There've been some really good ones.
I agree. Yeah, some really tasty ones.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I can top that improbable crossover with another improbable crossover. My second choice is Archie Meets the Ramones. Obviously from Archie Comics, written by Alex Segura and Matthew Rosenberg. Of course, we're familiar with Matthew's work for several titles for Black Mass Studios. So this ought to be kind of interesting. So obviously the story is the Ramones somehow come to Riverdale while the Archies are doing a battle of the bands.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah, why not? Ought to be fun. After Predator and Sharknado and Punisher and all that, this seems kind of tame, but it ought to be fun.
Well, they've met Kiss, so why not bring in the Ramones?
Sure, why not? Fun picks all around this week, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Another really good week. Any special mentions before we start wrapping things up?
I do have one.
Okay.
And that's the end of a series by Dynamite Entertainment. It is Shadow, Death of Margot Lane. It's the 5th issue of the 5-issue series coming out. So I'm looking forward to, because I'm going to be able to sit and read the whole thing this time and not have to try to reread and read
Okay.
to get up to date. So I'm ready for this one too.
Cool. Mikey, any special mentions on your?
Nothing springs to mind.
Okay. I do. I do have one. Unfortunately, it's kind of timed. I mean, it kind of happened, just happened real recently. Herschell Gordon Lewis passed away on the 26th.
I did see that yesterday.
Yep. He's a director and known as the Godfather of Gore. And it's funny because Les and I and a mutual friend of ours, Jacob, were just talking about some of his films just a couple weeks ago. He directed Wizard of Gore, Blood Feast, The Gore Girls, a few others, and we were just talking about Wizard of Gore just a couple weeks ago, and these were films late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing anything. I don't know if it's just natural causes or what, but do want to extend our sympathies to his family and friends, and when you get a special name like that, wow. So, lots to him.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
I don't think so. I think we're done here.
Okay.
Nothing here.
Alrighty. Well, let's get into our shout outs. Of course, we always want to shout out to the guys at Manny the Martyr for our awesome music. Thank you guys for your support and the use of your music. Awesome guys. You check out our show notes. There will be a link to their page, I think a Facebook page, or you can go to our website. There's going to be a link there as well. Also want to shout out to Potter and Family, hashtag Potter and Family on Twitter for the support and retweeting links to our episodes. We do appreciate it. Thank you guys. Special shout out to Jake and Tom for always being one of the first ones out there to do it, and awesome guys.
Well, in this week, we also got a little bit of that action from Shane from the Now That I'm Older podcast.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So shout out to them, and I don't mean to leave out anybody else.
Oh no, yeah.
It's not intentional, guys. So
it's mostly because we're crappy at taking notes, but anyway,
Yeah, pretty much. A lot of great podcasts out there on anything and everything. Mikey mentioned it earlier that there's several just based on horror, but there's also comics, sports, just anything you can think of. Just go to Twitter and do a search hashtag Potter and Family, and you won't regret it. There's some really good people putting out some really good shows out there. So thank you guys. And of course, we want to thank you, listeners. Thank you for listening to the shows. Thank you for the downloads. We're always open to your response. Let us know what you think of the show, good, bad, or different. If you have any questions, suggestions, anything you like to mention, let us know.
Yeah, tell us what your opinions, what you love or don't love about horror.
Exactly. And the best way, yeah, please. We're always open to listen to your thoughts. And the best way to get a hold of us is either going to www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can go to our About Us page, and there's a contact form you can fill out there. Or you can send us an email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can contact us via social media. We are on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks. We are also on Twitter, obviously, at Fellowship Geeks. Mikey has his own personal page, at Mikey Geek. And I have one as well, at TomTCGeek. Give us a follow and just let us know what you think about our show or website, or if you have any comments, just let us know. We We would appreciate it.
We love that stuff.
And also, whatever source you download our show, whether it's iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play, we would really appreciate any kind of rating. And if you feel like giving us a review, that would be appreciated as well. Just let those fine people know what you think about our show.
The other new one, we've also got all our stuff up on YouTube now.
That's true. Yes. As of this week, we also have our shows up on YouTube, and there is, I'm sure we'll have a link on the notes page, but there's also a link on our on the web pages up at the top with the rest of our social media.
Mm-hmm.
So
also on that page are some older conversations that we had a few years back.
When we were doing a webcast. Yes, exactly.
Those are all there. There are also some old interviews from back then, if you're interested in looking at what people looked like 4 years ago. What we looked like 4 years ago.
Unfortunately, not all the shows made it over from our previous venue, which was Ustream. Obviously, all our Google Talks made it there because since they're all tied together. But unfortunately, some of the Ustream shows did not make it, and some of them maybe that's just as well.
Well, maybe we'll see.
But yes.
Feel free to enjoy what's there, and if you're feeling the hanker, hit a thumbs up on it or something. The usual stuff.
Definitely. So, anything else? Or I think that's about it for this week.
I think so.
I believe it is.
Alrighty.
Frighteningly enough, I think this one's over.
Okay. With that, we thank you listeners for checking us out. Y'all take care. And until next time, read more comics and support your local stores. We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,